Hello everyone and welcome back to Peaky Boardgamer. My name is Ektorakos. By the end of this video you will know how to play Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, which is a standalone, streamlined version of the very popular Terraforming Mars game. This one also features a two-player cooperative mode and also a solo mode. However, in this video I will explain the rules of a normal 2 to 4 players game. Let's move to the table and start. In the game, players are trying to make Mars inhabitable by bringing its temperature to +8 degrees, by increasing its oxygen level to 14%, and by creating 9 oceans on the planet. To perform well in the game, players will have to create an efficient resource engine that will enable players to play more project cards, which will utterly increase their terraforming rating. The game is played in rounds, which consists of 5 phases. However, not all of these phases are used on every round. Through a process, each player secretly selects one of the phases that will be executed in the round. Phases that were not selected by players will be skipped. All players participate in all selected phases. However, players that actually selected them will perform with a bonus. When the required temperature, oxygen and water levels are achieved, the game ends and players proceed to scoring. The player with the most victory points will win in Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. At first, place the board in the middle of the table. Then take the 9 ocean tiles and after you shuffle them, place one on each ocean space on the board facing downwards. Then take the 5 face tiles and place them to the side of the board in an ascending order, keeping the one face tile on top. These tiles should be placed facing downwards. Then create a supply of resources next to the board. Copper cubes is 1 resource, silver cubes is 5, and golden cubes are 10 resources. Also create a supply of forest victory points. We have 1 and 5 victory point tokens. Then use these 2 markers to indicate the starting oxygen level, which is 0%, and starting temperature, which is -30 degrees. Then separate cards of the game depending on their type. There are project cards, the main cards of the game. There are also corporation cards, and each player starts the game with one of them. And finally we have phase cards depicting one of the 5 phases in the game. With the phase cards you will create 4 player sets with 5 cards each, using the background color. Also, if this is your first game, you are advised to find and separate the project cards that depict a little star next to their number. Then do the same with corporate cards and find the 4 ones that depict a star as well. Otherwise, just add the starred cards with the rest of the cards. Shuffle and create a face-down project card supply next to the board. Keep enough space for a discard pile next to it. Players then take one personal board, select a color and take the markers and the phase card set of the corresponding color. The player's board depicts 6 different tracks. Using player markers, place a marker onto space 0 of every one of these 6 tracks. Next, each player is dealt 8 project cards from the supply. Players keep their cards secret from other players. If this is your first game, take the 16 starred project cards and randomly give each player 4 cards, who is then going to take another 4 from the general supply. If that was the case, place any remaining starred cards to the discard pile in the middle of the table. Then each player is dealt 2 corporation cards. Players will have to select one of them to use and one to discard. If this is your first game, then instead of this, take the 4 separated starred corporations and randomly give 1 to each player. In the normal game, however, you can also make use of an advanced rule. Just before you select the corporation you'll use in the game, you can discard any number of your project cards and replace them with new cards from the supply. After you examine your new cards, then you select which corporation you will use. Any remaining corporation cards return to the box. Then, after choosing your corporation, each player takes the starting bonuses depicted in this area of the card. Before doing that, let's explain the tracks of the player's personal board. There are 4 main production tracks on the board. We have production of mega credits, production of cards, production of heat, and production of plants. The corresponding tracks on the left will indicate the amount of resources you will produce whenever the production phase occurs. The resource cubes contained in the areas to the right, however, indicate the amounts you actually have. So to indicate that I start the game with 28 mega credits, I will place resource cubes that worth 28 into that area. Now I have 28 mega credits. However, the cards also states that I should start with 3 heat production. So I need to increase my heat production from 0 to 3. Players also have 2 tracks, one for steel and one for titanium. These, however, are not production tracks. These are called steel and titanium capabilities and grant discounts when playing your cards. Also, corporations might have permanent effects indicated in the bottom part of the card. This one says that during the game that player can use their heat as mega credits, but not vice versa. Finally, all players place a marker of their color onto space 5 of the terraforming rating track, which for convenience will be called TR track. The game is now ready to start. At this point, I would like to remind you that if you haven't done already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that bell button so you get notified of all our future videos. It will really help our channel grow and bring more videos like that to you. The game is played in rounds, and this continues until all 3 terraforming conditions have been met, which is when temperature and oxygen levels have maxed out, and also when all ocean tiles have been flipped. Every round consists of 3 steps. Step 1 is the planning step, in which all players select one of the 5 phases to be executed in the next step. That second step is the resolve phases step. During this step, some of the 5 phases will be executed. As we said in the overview, only phases selected by players in the previous step will be executed. In the third step of the round, the end step, players might have to discard some of their cards if they have exceeded their limit. First things first, let's start with the planning phase. All players have a phase deck with each card depicting one of the 5 phases. During this step, all players will secretly select one of the 5 cards and place it facing downwards in front of their play area. After all players have selected one of the phases, these cards are flipped. And then for convenience, you flip the face tiles of the selected phases. This makes obvious which phases will be executed in the next step of the round. The only limitation in this step is that you can never select the same face card in 2 consecutive rounds. The selected card in one round will remain there until step 1 of the next round, in which case you will have to choose one of the 4 remaining cards, and you will play the card like that. When all players have selected the card for the new round, players will take back their previous card and add it to their hand, so it can be used in the next round. In the resolve phases step, phases that were selected by players in the previous step will be resolved starting from phase 1 and going towards phase 5. So in our example, we will resolve phase 2 construction first, then phase 4 production, and that's it. Very important, in all activated phases, all players participate simultaneously, even if the phase was activated by another player and not by themselves. Every phase card has 2 areas. The top part describes the ability that will be performed by every player during that phase, but the bottom part describes a bonus that will be performed only by players that have actually selected and played this phase card. Before starting explaining what players can do during each one of the phases, as well as their bonuses, let's explain the key features of project cards. The main characteristic of project cards is their color. We have green, blue, and red project cards. Green cards mainly improve your resource engine by increasing your production tracks, or your steel or titanium capabilities. This card, for example, were it played, would increase the player's mega credit production rate by 4. If you ever increase any of the tracks by more than 10, you will use one of your remaining cubes, placing it in the appropriate decade space. Blue cards either grant players with an additional action that can be used in a specific phase, or with an ongoing effect that is always applicable in the specific phases described here. For example, the action granted from this card is that the player may discard a card from their hand in order to gain 3 plants. When the player gains plants, heat, or mega credits, they place the appropriate amount of resource cubes in the corresponding area. Finally, we have red cards, which grant instant bonuses that come in effect the moment you play the card. The next major characteristic of project cards is their cost and also some additional requirements in order to be played. The major cost is in mega credits and it's depicted in the top left corner of the card. This one, for example, requires 19 mega credits, which must come from this area here. Very important! Players can discard cards from their hand in order to gain 3 mega credits for each discarded card, and players can do this at any time during a round. Speaking of the mega credit costs of cards, it's time to explain the steel and titanium capability tracks. For every point of steel capability you have, you gain a discount of 2 mega credits whenever you play a card depicting a steel tag. So with my current situation, playing a card with the steel tag automatically has a discount of 6 mega credits. For every point of titanium capability you have, you gain a discount of 3 mega credits whenever you play a card depicting the titanium tag. So according to this situation, I always gain a discount of 12 mega credits whenever I play a titanium card. Also, if cards have both of the tags, then both capability tracks are applicable and you gain discount from both. Last but not least, and very important, you never spend your capabilities when you get these discounts. This discount is in effect for all cards played in the future. Some cards also depict a smaller box here, which are additional requirements that also need to be satisfied in order to play the card. This, for example, requires the player to spend 5 heat from the appropriate heat area. Another requirement is that one that requires you to have a specific number of tags in your played area. As you can see, cards can have from 0 to 3 tags in the left part of the card. When you play cards in your play area, you also gain the tags in these cards that might be used in requirements or other type of bonuses. Another type of requirement is that one that requires temperature or oxygen to have reached a specific colored level. As you can see, according to current situation, this card cannot be played until temperature increases by another 2 steps. Another characteristic of cards is that some cards also depict a victory point value that will be added to the player's score during scoring. Also, all cards have a text that describe all bonuses and effects regarding this specific card. Always make sure to read that text because instant bonuses, indicated by this lightning symbol, do not have a corresponding illustration on the card. For example, this card we saw earlier immediately grants the player with 3 plants in addition to the action which is gained for the rest of the game. During the game, players will be playing project cards from their hand into their play area. If you have enough table space, it is advised that players create 1 row for every card color. Make sure you play cards in a way so that tags and effects are always visible. Now it's time to see each one of the phases and what you can do in each one of them. When development phase is resolved, each player may play 1 green project card from their hand into their tableau by satisfying the costs or additional requirements on the card. No player is required to play a card. The bonus for players who selected this phase is that they get a 3 mega credit discount on the cost of the played card. Whenever you play a new card into your tableau, you need to check and maybe update your player board. For example, this card grants the player with an additional heat production for every titanium tag they have into their tableau. Right now, I have 2 titanium tags, so I increase my production of heat by 2. However, this means that since I have played this effect, whenever I add another titanium tag into my tableau, I need to take this effect into account. So after playing this card, not only I increase mega credit production as well as titanium capability by 2, but I also gain 1 more heat production because of that card and because I have played another titanium tag. In the construction phase, each player may play either a blue card or a red card. Again, you are not required to play any card. The bonus for players who have selected this phase is to either draw a card from the stack and add it to their hand, or they can play an additional blue or red card. In the action phase, each player activates any action effects and also any standard actions that is available for all players. Action effects from cards can only be used once, but standard actions can be used any number of times. However, the player who has selected this phase can activate an action card a second time. Let's see the actions that I currently have in my tableau. This card takes microbes and currently has 2 microbes on it. As an action, I can spend 1 of the microbes and gain 3 plants, which are placed here. With the next action, I can discard 1 of my cards and also gain another 3 plants. Let us now see the standard actions which are depicted here and are the same for all players. Players can create a forest and thus increase the oxygen of the planet by 1 level by spending 8 plants or by spending 20 mega credits. Likewise, players can increase the temperature of the planet by either spending 8 heat or by spending 14 mega credits. Finally, player can flip a new ocean tile by spending 15 mega credits. Very important, if you have enough plants or heat to increase the planet's oxygen or temperature respectively, then you must perform this action. However, you don't have to create a forest if you have 20 mega credits. This only applies for these 2 actions. Currently, I have 8 plants, so I must spend them and create a forest on the planet. Whenever you increase temperature, you forward the corresponding marker by 1 step and you increase your terraforming rating by 1. Whenever you create a forest, you also increase oxygen. You move the corresponding marker by 1 step, you increase your terraforming rating by 1, and also take a forest victory point token. Important, with card effects like this one that instructs the player to raise oxygen, you do not get the forest token. You raise the oxygen, you gain +1 to your TR per level increased, but you do not get the forest victory token unless explicitly written on the card. After oxygen has maxed out, you can continue creating forests, but you just gain the victory point forest token. When you create a new ocean, you flip any unflipped ocean tile on the board and instantly gain the bonuses depicted on that tile. In this case, it's a new project card from the supply and also 1 plant. Again, after flipping an ocean tile and getting the bonuses, you also increase your TR by 1. In the production phase, players produce resources according to their production engine. Players collect mega credits equal to their production plus their TR. So that player would produce 18 mega credits, which would be placed here. And players that have triggered the production phase will gain another 4 mega credits as a bonus. Next is the card production. I currently produce 2, so I take 2 cards from the top of the supply and add them to my hand. Players gain heat equal to their production, so that player would gain 5, and the same counts for plants, and that player would gain 10 plants. Finally, in the research phase, all players take 2 cards from the top of the deck, examine them, choose 1 of them to keep and 1 of them to discard. However, players that selected the research phase in the first step draw an additional 3 cards from the deck, so they draw 5, and they keep an additional card as well, so they keep 2 of them. The 2 cards enter the player's hand, and the other 3 are moved to the discard pile. Make note that you do not take 3 mega credits per card when you discard them for this reason. These were not cards from the player's hand. After the phases step, there is also an end step, which is there simply to ensure that no player goes to the next round with more than 10 cards at hand. So during that step, all players with more than 10 cards discard the excess cards and bring their hand at least back to 10 cards. Of course, they get 3 mega credits for every card they discard this way. After that, the game proceeds with the next round. The game ends at the end of the phase when all 3 terraforming conditions have been met. So if, for example, this has happened during the construction phase, players would move to scoring without performing the action phase. In scoring, players first discard the remaining project cards from their hand and convert them into mega credits. Then players score victory points equal to their acquired terraforming rating level, so the blue player will gain 30 victory points from that. Then players score victory points for their forest tokens and the blue player would gain 6. And finally players gain victory points depicted on their played project cards. Make note that some cards depict a star and the text of the card explains exactly how this card scores. This one, for example, is a card that accepts animal resources and scores 1 victory point per 2 animals remaining on the card at the end of the game. So the player scores 6 victory points from their cards. The player with the most victory points is declared the winner of the game. If there is a tie, players add up all resources in mega credits, heat and plants together, and the tied player with the highest total wins the tie and the game. And that were the rules of Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. If you like our videos and want to see more videos like that, please subscribe to our channel, and until next time, have fun and play more board games.